Hey guys, we're getting started here. I'm just tweaking a couple things. I'm only going to do a little bit today. But we are on the internet. We're live. Probably a little loud because I'm close to the mic, but hopefully it stays that loud whenever I'm further away. So give me 1 second. I'm trying to get to my dashboard so I can watch myself talk to you in the stream manager in case somebody redeems points. I don't have any water. I do have water. So I'll set this down here next to me. People may or may not pop in. You know what? It's all right. It's impromptu. I'm just randomly streaming right now. So I'll pull my phone over here. We are not cutting anything today. My dad tried to call me a little bit ago. He wants to see our little Mr. Cooper. Let's see here. Let's pull up my Twitch. And we should be able to see that we're live. And there's the stream manager. Perfect. All right, cool. I think we're good to go. All right, so today we are not sanding. We're not making a mess down here. Actually, the other day when we were sanding, I caused quite a bit of sand dust to end up landing inside my front tower intake fan. But I put black pantyhose over the top of the shield or the fan intake to prevent all that dust from just normal wear and tear of, debris in the air getting sucked into your computer. So that was super handy, but it looks obvious that I need to clean it, so I'm gonna have to do that. So today, I don't know if we can see on screen. I'll get to the closer, bigger camera here. All we're doing is we're making black lines or pencil mark lines on the armor pieces. That's going to be helpful for us. Here's the light. It's going to reflect and auto adjust this other camera. I'm not super big fan of that little camera. But the goal here is just to make trace lines around the entire piece so that when I go to do the score and snap method with an X-Acto knife and or box cutter, whatever you want to call it, that I'll have a line guide for trimming this thing off. So it's easy peasy. I mean, it's literally just tracing specific areas that you're going to be cutting with a pencil, and that's it. We might cut up small pieces to show you guys an example of how the score and snap method works with armor, and it is very commonly done with anything that's ABS, which is predominantly most armored costumes in the 501st. So we are just, let me see if I can get inside the camera here. So I'm in both cameras now. I got one off camera light right now to help with me being able to see my line. I don't know if it really helps you guys on camera seeing what I'm doing. I doubt it, maybe a little bit. This chest piece, I'm going over this pretty thick to make sure. I don't have my bot in chat. Let me get my bot in chat too. Just in case someone decides to trigger that. It'll come up. I'll keep an eye on it. There it goes. I'll make sure it connects. Again, we're doing the Tank Trooper build or the ICAT Trooper. This is a very long process. Building a 501st approved costume is not something you do overnight. It is something that takes, weeks, if not months. Oh, we got chat. Beep, boop, boop. Bot active. Yep, the bot's in chat now. All right. So again, I've got quite a bit of cutting to do. Cutting is nowhere near as messy as sanding is. I found a tutorial video online for some of this detailed work. The guy who does the vac form for this kit also made a tutorial, which is not as thorough as I'd like it to be, but he did a pretty good job. It's like a 18-part or 16-part video thing for just the armor, and I think it's an 8-part for the video. For the I'm quiet. Let me crank up my volume. Alright, let me set this to Omni. Bam. Crap. Alright, that's going to be extra loud. I just need to be closer. Hopefully that's better. I just need to speak up. I'm a tad quiet. That's what happened last stream. I was too quiet because I wasn't like right on top of the mic. That's better. Sounds good. Okay, cool. So little details like, see these kind of like, I guess you can call them like almost like horseshoe shape, U shape. This piece is the front part of where your neck is going to go, but a lot of costumes, like original TKs, don't have this. But there's this little, I don't know if you can see it. I marked it off already in the camera. There's these little X's there and little squares. Those parts get cut out, those little square parts, because the neck piece, I'll show you. This is the neck piece. It's essentially a collar that sits, well, if this part wasn't there, that top part, it would sit up here like that. And this middle part just gets ripped out because it's part of the cast. But these little hooks, let me see if I can show you. This little lip hook right here fits down inside the front of this armor, and it gives a connection because it stays loose in the front and connects in the back. We're not going to be cutting any of that out yet, but okay, so just as an example, all I'm doing is, I don't know if you can see the pencil marks, it's so light. Let me go to this camera. So there's a very faint black line around everything. There it is. You can definitely see it there. And again, it's just simply to help me cut. Some pieces, like in this case right here, this little detail piece, we're not going to cut that out. We will paint that. Eventually it will go black. There's a lot of detailed nuances to this armor piece, the back plate itself. I should put my other light on. So, right here, this little notch, these two notches, and there's a notch right here. This is a circular notch, these are square notches. In the case, I got clarification since the last stream. If you're a shore trooper, you'd cut these out. Here and here, and cut that out as well. If you're a tank trooper or an AT-ACT trooper, you're going to leave those there, those divots, and you're going to paint them in gray later. And there's other pieces here. That's a divot that simply shows where a small greebly goes. It's a circular part that sticks out, and then there's a little line here. You can't even see it on stream. That's going to sit another piece there. Then there's these little other details. There's one down here, and there's one right there. You also can't see on stream very well. Maybe there's a little indent. Those pieces are normally also cut out on a shore trooper, but they are not cut out on the tank. Let's get back here a little bit. Did you find references for the back details? Yes, I did. I found there's only one scene in Rogue One, and that has the back details. And I mean, honestly, there's only one scene that the tank trooper's even in the movie. And yeah, there's a website that has Star Wars stills for every single movie, and I was able to snag all the scenes that I thought were relevant for the costume. And I cross-referenced those to what we call the CRLs for the costume. I also trust this guy that made these kits, and in his tutorial videos he's talking in detail about what needs to be adjusted. that isn't even listed in the CRL. There's like a wax, or like not wax, but like a Vaseline material in here, so his vac form is doesn't stick to the ABS. So there's a little bit of residue left over from that. But so the guy who built this kit, he has tons of other kits too, like Clone Trooper, the Finn Troopers. I talked about this last stream. He's got a Old Republic Jedi armor kit. This guy worked on The Mandalorian Season 2. He did the HK parts for one of the HK droids that's in one of the later episodes of the Season 2. So I don't know if he's worked on anything with Rogue One. I know the guy who made our TIE Fighter kits, Cal from Faraway Creations, him and his crew worked on Rogue One. They did the Rebel pilot helmets and things like that. And you know, when you got guys that are making movie props or props for television shows, especially if they're from Star Wars and you're making Star Wars costumes, usually those guys are the guys you can be like, yeah, okay, well they said this, so chances are that's probably legit. This costume was never demoed or showed off at any of those press conferences that Disney had when Rogue One came out. It was just Stormtroopers, the new Stormtroopers, and the Shore Troopers. So it just kind of sucks because there's no reference materials of anybody who had a chance to get up close and personal with this armor, besides either people who have worked on it, know people who have worked on it, or are using the movie references, the stills that I'm using as well. There's a lot of details with the helmet too, which I'll show. I actually was doing some work on the helmet to do some more rotary tool or Dremel based stuff, and Ben, I bought the new Dremel, and it came in today, and it's nice. I haven't used it yet, but it looks nice. So again, I'm just marking along the lines, the edges here, and there's a slight indent, 3D indent, from where I'm leaving that line, right here, and this is what we call a return edge. This little like 1 to 2 millimeters, maybe 1 centimeter like thickness that will remain on parts of the armor. It might be thicker in certain other places, but you'll sand it down, and that 3D like return edge, or that extra piece of return edge, makes the armor look more, I guess, lifelike, as opposed to just a piece of 2D, foam that's just laying on your chest. Now, a lot of foam artists that do it for cosplay will actually layer the foam quite nicely, and they'll glue it together to get that same effect, that 3D effect. Now, there's different thicknesses of foam, I realize that too, but a lot of the details with foam work requires you to be very good with the heat gun, and by all means, you'll all be using a heat gun when you're building this too, like sometimes this isn't going to be out of the box going to fit me very well, and there's some wiggle room where you can tighten up certain spots, but for the most part, like doing the lenses for helmets and stuff like that, you have to use a heat gun for. So these two boxes here, these two top parts and this bottom part has a pre-dented line, which another piece is going to come out for, which I'll draw that in now. Thankfully that pre-dented line really saves me from having to measure it and draw it out myself. A lot of other kits that I've worked with from other armor vendors, such as my Snowtrooper, there's detailed ab plate pieces on the Snowtrooper, and I had to do all the math. There's the square spot, and then there's references to imagery and other people who have built these costumes already, but then they show you like how many centimeters or millimeters you have to go over to a certain spot, mark that, and then you're drawing a specific line. Some of the detail work, I never realized this on the Snowtrooper until just recently. There's a piece of metal that sits, and I don't know if this is what it is or not, but there's a detailed piece of metal that sits on the ab plate, and it actually looks like a piece of the metal part of a 3.5 floppy A drive, like the old school disk drives that you may be familiar with. And that metal piece looks like they kind of ripped it off of a 3.5 floppy, cut it up a little bit, and then they used that. Maybe that's not what they did, but it sure as heck matches almost to a T. And Star Wars props and costumes have always used random things in the world for, greeblies, as they call it. Do people look down on the kits with the details marked out? No, not at all, not at all. If the vendor puts the details on the kit for you to show you where you need to do things, people honestly prefer that. I think no like looking down on somebody like, oh, that's the easy kit. You did the easy kit. My Stormtrooper costume, which is now a Sand Trooper, was originally so you can see that this is the darkened square now. This is the not darkened square, so I'm going to keep working on that. There was a lot of trimming I had to do with it's called Walt's Trooper Factory. That's the vendor name for that TK kit. And he was I would say he was getting started. It was, I think I bought that kit in 2016, 2017. So he was just kind of getting started with all that. And whenever he would kind of pre-trim the kit a little bit for you, there's a lot left over for you to have to cut yourself. I've bought kits, like for my Studio Creations is the vendor that did my hard parts for the vac forming for my Scout Trooper, and there was hardly any extra plastic left over, like I'm marking right now. I wanted to cut all this piece off, but there was like nothing on my Scout. Like he already like pre-trimmed it, and I don't think he even charged me extra for it. So your mileage may vary with regard to who you get your kit from. And again, not every, there's specific people, and these are businesses that they run out of their homes, or maybe they have their own facility, but that's their job. That's their career choice was, they're a full-time costuming person, and maybe their family or wives, or they got enough staff to hire other people to help with work. But I can imagine people making a good living off of this if you have the demand for what you're building. In this case, there's only a handful of vendors that exist for shore troopers and tank troopers and all that, and that's pretty common. Like usually, and maybe if you want to build a stormtrooper from A New Hope, which is like the most common costume in 501st, there's a lot of different vendors that you can choose from. And I think when I say vendors, it's not like go to a website, put it on a shopping cart, and order it. Some places do have stuff like that, but a lot of times, I don't know if I want to be a little bit more detailed with this part, but a lot of times, you just message their business group on Facebook, or you have a conversation with them via email, like to get this order. And this guy has a website. This is Imperial Supply. But he doesn't have prices on his website, so it allows him to make adjustments to his prices if he needs to, based on supply and demand, and it's good. And also, I think the mouse, so to speak, would be upset if everyone was buying props from other people, but we're free advertisement essentially, so maybe the mouse wouldn't care. And we're very like LFL, like 501st, Rebel Legion. I think Mando Mercs as well, but I know for a fact Rebel Legion, 501st. We're in cahoots. We're very cordial with the Disney folks and LFL. So we have they have rules for us, and we follow those rules with regard to like store memorandums. If there's memorandum, sorry, like if there's like a memoriam or something, No, yeah, it's essentially there's rules with regard to, like, if there's a new Star Wars toy coming out, we can't go to businesses straight up and be like, oh, we're going to advertise for Walmart and show off our costumes and be like, oh, let's look at this Star Wars toy. There's specific rules of when we're allowed to go to places that are making a profit, and same with like baseball games, any like professional sport. I don't care if you're minor league, major league, or whatever. They have to make a request through LFL or Lucasfilm and request that our appearance is allowed to be made. And they'll LFL will ask them questions about, like, are you planning on profiting, or how, what's going on here, and making sure that there's no way that they're abusing essentially, I guess, the rights and or anything that is owned by Disney with regard to Star Wars. A lot of baseball fields or hockey, a lot of baseball clubs and hockey clubs and teams or whatever you want to call them, they will do Star Wars nights. And wait a minute, Lone Wolf cheered for 100 bits. Thanks, Lone Wolf. Now you're 101. Thank you. For a while, Lone Wolf was the top bit leader with 1 bit, and essentially 1 bit is 1 penny. I'm pleased to announce that now it's $1 and 1 penny. I love it. That's funny. Thank you, Lone Wolf. I appreciate it. Lone Wolf, I saw you decided to skip out on the Discord Nitro. I was honestly thinking about getting Nitro, but then I don't know. So my question to you is it worth it? Just like the Dalmatians, 101. Oh man. So that's like your own little Disney reference. I like it. Plus, I mean, I get it. You're in school, so the fact that you don't want to pay, was it $100 a year for that? It's kind of expensive, to be honest. So this gap right here, you can see there's a little curled lip from the vacuum formed molds. I'm scooted over just a little bit to that, right where the vac form line is. Up at the top, that was very straightforward. Trying to get the angle right here. Down into that gap. The newer films have this pre-made cover strip. On the old TKs from the original films, this cover strip was legit a cover strip to glue the pieces together. There's an additional cosmetic cover strip that's thinner than this. This is actually part of the vacuum form. There's another piece I'll have to cut from ABS, straight line, and lay over top of this. And that extra detail is simply just that. It's not actually functional. It's just a detail piece. And they wanted to do that because there's more details for the movie. I don't want to pay extra for Nitro when they raise the price. Well, they raised the price, so I was grandfathered for a while. I don't need anything more expensive. Nitro gives me anyways. Just wanted to cross server emojis and if you're a subscriber to the channel, you can still use our emojis from the channel on any Discord server. If you have your Discord synced, which I think you do. We got the Coco coin, and we got the refund arcade cabinet for the tier 2, and then we got the Cooper face for tier 3, and I've got one more avatar, or it's not avatar, emoji I can set up. We also have that RIP icon as well. So I'm up for suggestions, interactive suggestions for that extra icon that I could be giving out to tier 1 subscribers. Don't know what that should be right now. So we're going, again, I'm working on this top edge. This is the ankle part of the boot. This is the left side. You can see he wrote in there for me. He had R there for right, but this is actually the left side, so he fixed it. So thank goodness he did that, but I would have figured it out anyway. This isn't my first rodeo on building armor that's going down around your legs. It's uncommon for my other costumes, but the TK has it. So, yep. But tonight, while we're doing is just penciling in these lines, and I may cut a piece, but didn't want to stay out. You know, last time we streamed costume stuff, it was several hours. It was like 3 hours, I think. That was a little long. So, just marking some stuff. And this rubs off really easy. This is literally just pencil marks on a piece of plastic. So hopefully it stays on. It should. Normally you mark this when you're getting ready to cut it, but it's been sitting in a box, so it shouldn't be a problem at all. But there's no thigh pieces in this kit, unlike a Stormtrooper. It's just pants. There are the greaves, or whatever you want to call these little like shin plates. The shins are much more detailed. There's straps on these things. There's these front details similar to like the sniper knee plate you'd see on a Stormtrooper, and then a lot of that kind of stuff going on that you'd see on a Sand Trooper. Just other costumes like short troopers have this as well, but just details that I don't know what I want to do for that. Guess I'll just follow that line up. I might come back and measure this to make sure that the line that I'm cutting is straight. A lot of times you need to allow for a little bit of overlap because you're going to be gluing this together. And you can glue it in a couple different ways. You can use CA glue or traditional like super glue, CA glue. And that glues fast. I mean, you're done. It's set within a minute or less. But once you touch those two pieces of plastic together, you better know exactly where you want to put it, or you're toast, and you ruin the piece. So I like the more forgiving approach, and I will use, hey, what's going on, man? I will use other stuff. There's something called E6000. It's a very thick, clear base glue. They have it in different colors too. You can get white and black, but I usually use clear, and it peels off really easy. And it doesn't damage if you want to take things apart, but it stays very well. It doesn't come off like you would see it with other glues. So it's kind of semi-permanent, I guess you could say. And it has a little bit of flex to it. So that's my go-to. So like CA glue or any other super glue is fine if you know exactly what you're doing. And some of those parts I will use CA glue. Now the cure time for CA is, like I said, a minute, whereas cure time for E6000 is usually I usually wait for 24 hours. So I usually use clamps. I got a ton of clamps. I'll be clamping pieces together so I can hold things flush onto itself, so when it sets it stays there permanently. And then any excess spillover from the glue you can actually just pick off with your fingers. Like you can just rub it. And there's a technique that once you get down how to pull off CA glue, E6000, you kind of master that skill, and it's just like peeling a sticker off of something you'd buy at the store, like a price tag. All right, so we got two shins done. They're the outer sides. So this is the left outer side. The other one was actually this is the right inner side. So we got two more of those to do. They look a little different. They're just vacuum formed to the opposite direction. We'll do one of these. This is the bicep piece. So they do have that. They have Zap-A-Gap kicker. So if you want to kick the glue really fast, and it glues within seconds when you touch them together. You can do that too. So if you're extra pro zone, you can buy some kicker accelerant. I've used it once, and I wasn't a big fan, and I'll tell you why. I used it on a piece, and it worked perfect for that piece. But the odor from the aerosol can that I was using to spray it on stayed in the air around me. So as I was going to put super glue on something else, the chemical was floating in front of me. Like you couldn't see it like a cloud, but it was like the smell was around. And that kicker odor was still in the air, and it actually caused the reaction as I hit the glue, and it was like crystallized before I could even put the other piece on it, and it made me have to resand that whole piece down. You can also use baking soda. I've heard too, the guy who built this, has this kit, said the bleach used in paper towels and in cotton swabs, if you get them that are like the standard ones that are bleached, that bleaching chemical that they use in that also helps kick things. So if you don't want to kick things quick with a spray or anything like that, or I guess baking soda, you can just use a Q-tip. But he also said to be quick about it, because you don't want to leave your Q-tip in the glue as it dries, and then you'll just have a hard Q-tip. But I mean, Q-tips are cheap, so you can have a couple dozen sitting in front of you if they go bad. So working on the bicep. The bicep is probably the easiest piece of this costume. There is a detailed cover strip that is just for cosmetic purposes only in this build as well. And then we're going to work on the return edge here. Again, there's the actual plastic here. Let me get closer to the camera. There's the actual plastic that's from the vac form mold here that we're going to cut off. But then you can see right through here, we want to keep that return edge. A little bit of it, not all of it. But we need to keep some of it so it gives us that feel that it's thicker than just a flat piece of plastic. Fun fact, if you're building a New Hope Stormtrooper, down on the not the biceps, but down on the arm forearm pieces, on this part of the arm, this lower part where your wrist is going to stick out, in the New Hope they didn't have any return edge at all. They actually cut it out completely, and it was very thin. So when I did a level 3 Stormtrooper for A New Hope, I actually had to cut my return edge out that I had in there because I thought it looked good, but it wasn't actually in the movie. So that was one of the requirements for a higher level approval for the Stormtrooper. Now that's only relevant to A New Hope. They left return edges in other costumes. There is a return edge in stuff like Rogue One. There's new accent or cosmetic pieces of plastic that I'm going to lay on top of here that is simply there for just cosmetic look. I hear that little Cooper upstairs. He's crying his butt off, fussing. I will leave a small return edge on the bottom here. And again, just like cutting someone's hair, cut what you think you need to cut, but don't cut too much, because if you cut off too much, it's not going to grow back. Well, in this case, it won't grow back. You can try to, glue things back together or something like that, but it's not going to look good. And people can, chalk it up to, oh, it's weathered. Well, I mean, you can weather it, and some things you can get away with. Other things, if it's too catastrophic, it's not weathering it, it's broken. So you just got to be cautious with what you're doing when you're going to cut things. Make sure it's a piece that you want to cut. The old measure twice, cut once mentality is pretty important. And again, this is strictly some people think this is an optional step. They can just freehand cut this with no problem whatsoever. It can be done, but I'm very cautious about these cuts, because again, you don't want to make a mistake and then you have to go buy this piece again, because one, you're gonna have to wait a while, because normally they sell them in kits, and I'm sure this guy would sell me a single piece if I needed it. He actually forgot one part to this costume, and I messaged him about it, and I laid out all the pictures. I took a picture of all the armor laying out on the floor right here and said, hey, here's my photo of what I received, and here's the photo you have on your website. This is the stuff that I'm missing. Or I'm only missing. It was one vacuum formed piece, like a square piece. I said, hey, I'm missing that. So he emailed me when he got back into work, because he said he was going to be on vacation until January 4th, which was yesterday. And he emailed me back this morning, or actually it was last night, I think it was. It was last night, saying, hey, I apologize, I didn't mean to do it, but I'll send it out to you, no cost, just let me know. But I messaged him back, and I was like, hey, you make the resin detail molds for the belt. I have like the basic level, simple version. Let's see what those look like for the belt details. Now some of the belt I have is resin, but these drop boxes, as they call them, this is just ABS plastic, and it can look good if you trim it up, but it still has that not as sharp look to it. It's kind of a little bit softer, and the resin, for example, is just so much sharper looking. So if I show you an example, this is the base part of his thermal detonator. Looks very different than a traditional New Hope thermal detonator, but this was cast in resin, and it has these nice sharp detailed edges, which you won't really get that kind of detail even if you have a really tight vacuform table. You'd have to use very thin plastic or very sharp molds, or get that temperature just to the right sweet spot, which can be dangerous because then you could be damaging the materials that you're using, and then he's out of material. And the more he wastes, the more expensive these kits get. The more expensive the kits get, the less likely people will buy them. So there's one arm. There's an outside version that we just did, and then there's the inside version, which is just literally just soft. Nothing, no rough edges with this one at all. I'll just hit this really quick. That poor Cooper. I might have to go upstairs in a little bit. So again, we're just marking around the base, the top base of the forearm armor here, leaving a little bit of a lip. I'm just doing the rough scrub. When I go back to cut this, I might clean up the pencil line a little bit. But most of the scrap, you save it. And why do you save it? You save it because you can make ABS paste with it. So if you do damage a piece of armor, or you want to reinforce the armor even more, you get a bit of acetone. Go to Lowe's or wherever you buy your acetone. Take a bunch of plastic, put it in a glass jar, throw it down in the acetone, and it'll smell a little bit. But it'll melt this plastic into a paste, and you can apply this paste, and it'll harden and reharden. So if you accidentally damage a part that has a gap, it's not going to look perfect. It won't look as smooth as it currently is, but you can sure as heck fill a hole that you might have accidentally created. And if you fill that hole, it won't be noticeable. And it's using the same exact material, the same color material, so that's a good way to patch stuff up. So, what else? All I can hear is Cooper upstairs crying his butt off. It makes me feel guilty down here talking to you guys. Lisa, you can bring him down if you think he'll calm down. Just maybe give him another change of scenery if you're still watching. Oh my goodness, he is so upset. So he's officially teething now. He's got to be, because he's drooling like crazy and he's constantly wanting to put stuff in his mouth and chomp down real tight. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have some chompers showing up pretty soon. My mother said that I had teeth very early, and I had my teeth pretty early as well, so maybe he will too. We gave him rice cereal for the first time yesterday, and he was eating it like crazy. So we had to mix it with, breast milk and all that to make it dilute. It's predominantly mainly liquid because we were supposed to ease him into it as it's it's more liquidy at the start, and then we kind of back off the milk a bit. Cooper, oh my goodness. Ravenna's been doing that too, but no eruptions yet. Okay, keep an eye out, I guess. Yeah, you gotta look for those little teethers coming in. It'll be fun. Hopefully it'll be fun. Hopefully they won't be super upset, but It's a learning experience for everybody involved. So I can cut this shorter edge. Looks like my dad said that my grandmother and my mother, I don't know, they sent me cookies. My stepmom and her mom. That sounds pretty good. I like that. Gotta love the cookies. So yeah, the more I kind of leave excess on here when I cut this, I can always adjust this. And these sections are going to get tucked into themselves. So when I go to glue them, as long as the edge is smooth and sanded off, it doesn't pinch you or anything like that, then you can kind of eyeball this, at least to get the edge off, and then clean things up as you go. I would say the most difficult build that I've done has been my Stormtrooper thus far, because of the amount of detail I focused on getting it approved at that tier 3 level. And then I ended up not liking it and turning it into a Scout Trooper. Oh man, thank you for the follow, appreciate it. Oink oink evil pig, thank you. But I do think this one is going to be taking the cake. This armor, while it's still white right now, I have to paint it because my helmet is also white, but it's not. It's off-white. It's a different material. So everything needs to be uniform. So I'm going to be painting everything. Everything gets painted. And if everything gets painted and it's plastic, that means you've got to sand everything. All the surfaces, kind of get that shine off, so that the paint will hold better. I've bought some white gloss paint already that has primer mixed in. It's more expensive, but it'll save me a step. And now I've got to buy the same brand for the whole entire kit. I watched the guy who created this sand and paint and sand and paint, and yep, that's correct. You just sand and paint constantly, and eventually you'll be done. I'm eyeballing this line. There's other fast techniques to going around the wrists, so you have the exact size, same size return edge throughout the entire piece of the armor. And I used to, with my Stormtrooper kit, measure every few inches along the way, make a dot, and then connect all the dots, so I knew I had the exact same length all the way across. Now that is time consuming. Now I'm just eyeballing it right now. As long as I have somewhat of a return edge, it's maybe about 1/8 of an inch, I'll be happy. And then if I need to cut it back some more, I can. Sometimes 1/8 of an inch is, maybe that's a little too thin, so it might be 2/8 or 1/4, depending on, that's kind of thick. In this case, it's definitely like 1/8. Okay, so this piece is done. I'm making a pile right now of all the pieces that I've done, and we will again just mark everything, and then I'll just wrap up the stream. So we're going to do the other arm piece. This is the other inner part of the arm piece. So unlike the Short Trooper, the biceps, everything in this costume is pretty much just black, white, and dark gray. If you do the Commander version of this costume, there is like the dark gray on the shoulder bells. There is a red U shape instead of a yellow U shape that you see on the Short Troopers. There is I think that's it. It's just black. It's just black and gray colors. Some gray foam, EVA foam, neoprene foam. I'm looking for dark gray. Looking for it because I've been spinning off and on like during my lunch break today for work. I was hanging out on Amazon trying to find a vendor that was selling dark gray neoprene, like maybe 3/16 of an inch thick material, like in a sheet or some sort of roll. And I don't need a ton of it because on the side of the costume, on the front chest plate and in the back, right here, this edge, I'm gonna go down here, this part right here, there's going to be some foam that sticks out. Foam or neoprene, whatever you want to call it. Some people use EVA foam, and that might hold up over a little while, but then I know some folks that said that when they put EVA foam in, it lasted a couple of troops or a couple events, and they had to replace it. Look into HD foam. Okay, I will look into HD foam. Did you buy that on Amazon, or do I have to buy it like through another vendor? I went to Lowe's. I went to Michael's. I did buy some 3/16 of an inch black neoprene material that I'll be using for padding for the helmet when I glue it. And I actually have helmet padding for a military helmet that I'll be putting inside for my cushioning purposes. But the neoprene is going to be used to cushion and absorb some shock from the shield and the horns that are being glued together onto the helmet itself. That was recommended from the builder, or the guy who created this kit. So I'm going to do that. If through a vendor, I'll find you the link. Awesome, thank you. And so I'm on the hunt for the foam still. I have the paint for the dark gray and the black and the white. I most likely will have to go out and buy more gloss white paint at some point. Now, the guy who made this kit, or at least the model of this kit and makes the vacuum forms for it to sell, he recommended semi-gloss. And I was kind of on the fence about that. I didn't want to do matte. The matte color would be not my thing. And then, satin is kind of like a semi-gloss, but not exactly the same thing. But I want to go with the shiny look, and then if I need to weather it and rough it up, I can. I'm just curious that if I sand gloss paint, if it'll look bad. I don't think it will. I don't plan on sanding a whole lot. When I weather this the costume, I'm going to use acrylics and some Fuller's Earth that's gray, and a little bit of grimy colors. Okay, I got your link at dickblick.com. That sounds... You gotta be very careful when you type that into your address bar if you're typing it in. Jeez. This dude on Insta named SKS Props has a brand of HD foam. SKS Props. That sounds familiar. What does he work on? Do you know? What does he do for prop stuff? I feel like I've heard of that guy before. Oh, that's what you sent me. Okay, perfect. I just think it's funny that the name of the website is a kind of like whitehouse.com instead of whitehouse.gov back in the 90s. You didn't want to go to whitehouse.com if you were in elementary school trying to go to whitehouse.gov. I remember when email was first starting to come out, like consumer grade, like people were starting to understand what email was. I was in 4th grade one year, and we had a computer that was connected to the internet. And in the mornings, the teacher would let you, she would rotate out people that would be allowed to use the internet in the morning when you came in. And it was, getting kids exposed to how the internet worked back then and all that was kind of cool. And I remember this kid in school wrote an email to the president at the time, which was I think Bill Clinton, and wrote him this really nasty email saying that he hope he dies and stuff like that, because I don't know, maybe he didn't like Bill Clinton, and man, that kid got in so much trouble, not by the government but by the teacher. The government probably was like, yeah, whatever, but yeah, that kid got roasted. All right, so there's my cleanup there on the lines where I'm going to be cleaning up for that return edge. It's about an eighth of an inch, maybe a little bit more, maybe 2/8 ish, 1/4, right? Ballpark. All right, so this is done. So we're done with that piece. One more arm piece to go. We're done with that. Fourth grade, email to Bill. I voted for Bill. Damn, I'm old. Damn. No, yeah. So I was, when Bill was running, I think like Ross Perot. Who else was running back then? I was born in '86, so that gives you a frame of reference of how old I am. So, original trilogy was out before I was even born. All three of them. It's always fun to hear people's stories about what movie they saw Star Wars wise first, and what movie it was, and where you remember watching it and that kind of thing. So for me, I was in my living room when I was a kid growing up. My dad was sitting on the couch and he had Return of the Jedi on. It was on some TV broadcast. It was like TBS or something crazy like that back in the mid '90s, mid to early '90s. I think I was probably 4 or 5. And he was watching it. And I remember seeing the speeder bike chase for the first time. It was my first exposure to Star Wars, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And I was so hyped that a couple days later, my dad found the original trilogy box set, not the special edition. This was pre-special edition, the black box with Darth Vader and Yoda and whoever else was on the box, I forget, for the 3 movies. And he handed it to me whenever he got home from work, and he said, "Go watch these." And he didn't think I was going to watch them the same day. But I got those, and I binge watched all 3 movies in my bedroom whenever I was 5 or 6. And it was the coolest thing. Back to back, didn't stop at all. It was nighttime whenever it was. I was pretty much having to go to bed whenever I was done watching it, because I started it, midday. My dad worked late shift. I think he might have brought it home the day before and finally gave it to me before he went to work the next day. But yeah, I had my mom let me hook up the VCR in my bedroom because I don't think she wanted to watch Star Wars. And I just Star Wars it up. Alright, so we're almost done with this last piece. And it's cool. I'm getting 2 birds, 1 stone here. Because I got the forearm and the bicep all in one cut. So when we go to cut this later, it'll be cut down the middle, separate them out, and then cut around the edges here. Some people use snips and scissors. I don't like to do that, mainly because you do run the risk of bending the mold when you cut it, the piece of plastic, and then it could crack. So I think the bend and the score and snap method is the best method, at least in my personal opinion. So you score it first with an indent with a sharp blade, and then it should bend and snap right off, easy peasy. And once you've snapped everything off, you're not done. I mean, you have to sand all those edges that are sharp so that they don't cut into you, which I was talking about last time we did this. Something called armor bite that we call in the community. You don't want to have armor bite to where you go to a troop or an event and you wear your costume for the first time and you're bleeding at the seams because you didn't sand your internals of your armor. I've seen people legit have welts or imprints in their armor after they've taken it off for the first time, and they just joined 501st, and it's their first TK kit, their first Stormtrooper kit, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so excited! I get to wear this." And then by the end of the event, they start taking their stuff off, and they've got red marks just covered all over their body because they didn't necessarily do a good job. And that's fine. That's okay, because when you do that, you know what? I'm not gonna trim these off because I'm planning on ordering the resin version of this. So I'll pass on these for now. If he doesn't get back to me on the resin kit, or if the resin kit's too much, then I'll come back to trim these. But we'll wait on that. Same goes with this. This is part of the belt box as well. Here's a knee plate. This is what's just commonly called a sniper knee plate. It's very similar. Maybe it's not identical, but it's extremely similar to the knee plate used for a stormtrooper, which is a different knee plate that's from the sand trooper like we talked about last time. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this one. We watched, this is the inside of it. So this is the part that gets kind of glued onto your shin piece when you get the shin pieces all put together. The maker of this actually kind of cut the insides here and the corners a little bit to give it some flexibility. So then whenever he glued it on to the armor, so it would kind of permanently be there, he actually used Bondo to fill in the gaps once it's been glued on. So he kind of got the perfect shape, to his shin pieces so it fits him. And that looked flawless with his short trooper build that he did as an example in the video that I watched. So I don't have any Bondo, but I will need to go out and buy some Bondo for that kind of situation. Now I do have some clay, which I'll show you. That hard forming clay called I call it. I have it in the other room. I know exactly where it is. I'm going to show it on stream before I wrap up. So I keep being like, oh, what's it called? What's it called? And every time I try to remember the name of it, I can't think of it. I think it's called Sculpty. Let me go grab it. No, it's this stuff right here. It's called Epoxy Sculpt. It's a two-part epoxy kind of mixture. You have, it's kind of similar to like JB Weld if you've done any JB Weld stuff on a car. But think of it, it's once you mix it all together, it's as malleable as frickin', clay. You can put water on it like you would if you're doing any, ceramics. But then it hardens, and it hardens super hard. I don't know. Here, I'll show you an example. Not to be cheesy, because my wife's going to be like, oh, you're so silly. So anyway, I made her a little heart with some extra stuff. It's not focusing because I have autofocus on right now. But this thing is hard as a rock. But originally it was, this very soft clay material that once it's hardened, after about 24 hours, it's hard as heck, and you can't do anything with it. Like, you can't shape it anymore. You can sand it. So I could use that, and I did use that for my helmet a little bit, but I'm not going to use it for, because Bondo is very different. It's got the same purpose, so you can fill in holes and gaps, but it dries differently, and it's a different chemical compound, so it can be a bit more forgiving depending on the situation. All right, so this underside here, I guarantee I'm going to have to cut this at some point, but I'm going to cut down this lower edge first, and then I work my way up to where it needs to be later on. Once I have most of the shin piece assembled, look at me, I'm all blurry now. There we go. Once I have most of the shin pieces together, and I've got the faux belt stuff drawn out to do the belt parts on like the straps. And here's an example of a strap. This thinner strap goes down around here, and it's like a rubberized material, so it goes on like that. And if you go look at a short trooper online or a tank trooper, the tank troopers in the movie, you don't see their ankles, but it goes on like that. So this little detail effort is cooler than just your traditional stormtrooper. All right, so we're getting there. This is the belt backing. So it goes back here. Normally the belt is just exposed in the original trilogy, just the fabric itself. But in this case, the front of the belt is exposed in the movie with detailed greeblies, or those little sheeps that I was talking to you about. But the back of the belt is not exposed. There's a piece of plastic that sits over top of it, and the thermal detonator sits on the back of this. So I would imagine you glue, and I don't know how to do the belt properly. I'm going to have to do some research on that. Again, you got to do your homework first, do all your measurements, then do your cutting. Lots of people get antsy. They're like, oh, I'm going to build my costume. And they get too excited and then they screw something up. So just take your time. I feel like that's like a Bob Ross thing. It's just like, take your time. Do what makes sense. So I guess Bob Ross was more like, oh, just, do whatever feels right. In this case, make it movie accurate. Or if you don't want to make it movie accurate, that's fine. You can build your own costume. I've seen people buy kits and they do like their own custom trooper, and more power to them. It looks pretty cool. Well, the back form on this kind of got sloppy on that line. Kind of fudge that up. I'll have to clean that up. Maybe it doesn't need to be that long. That's probably why. So I have a, there's a detachment for this costume, and in 501st they have different detachments which are costume specific, or a series of costumes that are specific. So for example, if you're in, you want to build a snowtrooper costume or a snowtrooper commander costume, which is a little different. They have a different helmet and everything like that. Or anything that's usually like Hoth cold based, because the Wampas are in there too. Even though Wampas aren't in the Empire, it's just, it's a general costume that can be part of both parts of the two different legions. Just like a Jawa or a Jawa or a Tusken Raider can be part of both. It's a dual costume. So it's called Blizzard Force. Blizzard Force does that. So whenever I was building my snowtrooper, I had to ask questions on the Blizzard Force website about certain details. So the Armored Cavalry is the detachment for this costume. So anything that's tank driven, like, so you think your ATST drivers, your AT-AT or AT-AT drivers, they're all part of that as well. AT-ACTs, that kind of stuff, they're all part of this armored subdivision for that costume. And you can be part of different detachments. I'm part of a bunch because I've got too many costumes. So that's it for the belt. We'll clean that up later. What else we got? Boxes. But they are, they have appointed leaders for different parts of the costume. Like, they have detachment leaders, and those folks help run that subdivision of the organization. Again, just think of different chapters of an organization, like sororities or fraternities. That's considered a garrison, or they have outposts and squads. That is based off of location, but detachments are based off of costume. And the detachment folks, they live and breathe that costume, and they're responsible for potentially approving costumes where the GML or the garrison member liaison does not feel comfortable doing so in the local area. So the place to ask would be those detachment folks. So I started a build thread, is what it's called on the forum, build thread, to just kind of show progress of me building this out. And if questions come up, I can ask there, just like anything else with all the 501st stuff. People are very helpful. They're very willing to help you with building this, or at least giving you guidance on things. Same with anything costuming community-wise. Usually folks are very open to sharing how they got things made or what they did to accomplish their sweet-ass costumes. This box, it looks so simple. It's like, what the heck is this for, right? Where does that go on your armor? I don't know where this goes. So actually, once I trim this up, if you remember on the back plate, I think I talked about this maybe in the previous stream, when you pop these out, these come out. We mark those to pop out. This sits in the back here. Actually, I guess this way. And you can see in the inside, it sits in like that. And it holds one of the greeblies, the details in the back of the, for the back part of the back. So there's two of those, and there's one more for the lower part as well. That's a different shape. And I found out why it was shaped differently. It was shaped to contour to your back. That's why he shaped it that way. We'll get to that here in a second. So he has the line here that I'm following. It's a little bit above where he has his return edge for this one. How long have we been going? About an hour? Okay, we'll keep going a little bit more. I'm almost done with this whole costume for the markings. Make sure I get this one kind of vacuum formed, like not as nice. The top part didn't seal as well when he heated it up, so it doesn't have that edge that I want. But again, I can sand it to where it needs to be. We'll figure it out. My first costume was a Scout Trooper, like I've mentioned before, and honestly, it was a very simple build. There wasn't a whole lot to it. But I love like the plastic armor thing. It does look really cool. But I tell you what, foam armor can look just as cool. For like, I've seen some people doing some like really wicked WoW costumes when I went to Dragon Con back in 2013. And another little piece. And the stuff that you can do with like some people that are really good at craft foam, like EVA foam and things like that. When you're good, it's awesome. It's really cool to see stuff like that. So I've got a bunch of straps in front of me. These straps are used for the shoulders and the legs. That's all these are used for. He gives you an extra strap for like a shoulder strap. So there's 4 here and 2 here. Mainly because it goes around an extra part. When we get to that step later on, whenever we're actually building the costume, I'll show you why they give you an extra piece. There's a reason for that. Here's another small detail piece. We'll do this one really quick. This is the slots where these actually live. This slides down into this eventually once I got it out. And this piece raises up on the back parts of the back plate. And there are some detail pieces for that are marked on the kit. So when you buy this, you know, a lot of people want to just buy it pre-made, pre-ready to go, pre-ready to wear out of the box. There are costumes that are pretty darn close to that. Like I was mentioning, my Scout Trooper is almost ready out of the box besides setting up the strapping, a little bit of sanding, and a little bit of riveting. So you have to be familiar with how to use a rivet gun, but it's not bad at all. So I'm going to scribble in the section that I know I need to cut out so I don't forget. I probably wouldn't forget, but I'm just going to mark it so I know that needs to go out eventually. And then we'll just mark these corners around the edge. And he actually trimmed some of this for me already. I just got to sand the corner, so that's nice of him to do that. Again, mileage varies. Sometimes these armor vac builders get really busy and they just got to get the kits out the door. I bought this during a holiday sale he had for Thanksgiving going on where he offered free shipping. And for this type of thing, that's amazing because shipping a kit like this, while it's just a bunch of plastic, it's like 20 pounds. I mean, there's a lot. They put all the plastic, all the accessories. You know, you're not wearing 20 pounds when you put the suit on eventually because there's a lot of plastic I'm going to cut off of this. But then there's, you know, packing peanuts and all kinds of stuff that he protects this so this doesn't get banged up. So when you see a deal like, oh, free shipping on a costume like this, you know, that piqued my interest. And I was talking to Lisa, I was debating on whether or not I wanted to even do this because it takes time. And with Cooper, you know, I wanted to, I don't know, it's very therapeutic to do this. And I'm sure some of you guys that build costume or paint figures or print things out in 3D printers, it's very therapeutic. It gives you something to do with your hands. Where you know, you're playing video games, that's cool, but it's still a little different than just playing video games. So these belt boxes, again, I'm skipping those for now. These are the side pieces that go right here. So this is the chest plate. There are, and again, it'd be great if I cut them out. He wrote OPO on the back. What does that mean? OPO. I don't know. But they sit like that. Not well. This is the bottom part, but that's the one that would be right there. And again, if it's trimmed up, it'd look a lot better. Those get glued on, and then the back gets Velcro, so you can Velcro it onto your back plate, so you can get in and out of the armor. So it's also kind of a fun puzzle. Once you get everything painted, and it looks pretty, and it's pretty much ready to wear, there's more to it than just putting it on. You got to strategically think about where you're going to place your straps and how you're going to attach your straps. Are they going to be using snaps? Are they going to be using Velcro? Are they going to be using some folks use traditional, like the way that in A New Hope back in the late 70s, when they the shin pieces were kind of glued on the front, but they would open up in the back so you can get your calf in, your leg in, your foot and everything. So rather than using Velcro, because Velcro was fairly uncommon in at least the first film in the late 70s, at least the adhesive sticky Velcro, the sew-on Velcro was still a thing, and gluing things on, you know, your mileage may vary back then. They actually had these little, you know, like, if you think of the back of a bra, a women's brassiere bra, there's these little like hooks, and then the little latch kind of system that's like metal. They used metal hooks to like hook these together back in the day, exactly like a bra strap kind of a concept. Again, because they used what they had on hand, and on hand they didn't have sticky Velcro because it was a different time. So yeah, so snaps, straps, Velcro. Some people use like the bra strap concept if they want to be super hardcore, just like the movie accurate stuff. That's one example where you didn't have to do that for a level 3 certification for the Stormtrooper. You do not have to have the bra strap thing. However, like when I went to do, again, all the detachments are different depending on their rule set. But there's still that common level 1 Legion level base level, or whatever you want to call it, approval, which is common for all costume things across the board. But there's higher tier approval. Some costumes have them, some don't. There is a level 2 certification for the the Sand Troopers. There is also a level 3. The level 3, you actually have to choose an on-screen Sand Trooper and mimic the weathering patterns. Talk about insane. You got to mimic the weathering patterns for a specific on-screen trooper. Whereas with like the TKs, you just simply had to get all the fittings and the positions and details right. A little bit more so than just your traditional approval or your basic approval for that costume. So no gaps in your costume yet. You couldn't have gaps between like your kidney plate and your ab plate. Whereas if you walk around and you see a 501st member that does have a gap in their costume that's, you know, approved, that chances are it's level 1, which is fine. Looks good. But if you want to be, you know, the top, you know, tier, so to speak, you got to put in that extra effort. And you don't have to. People, it's not for everybody. But I usually built, and when I built my Stormtrooper, I did that with the in mind to be approved at level 2 out of the gate, and then make modifications for level 3. And then when I modified that costume to do my Sand Trooper, I knew for a fact that I did not want to do level 3 because I did not feel like mimicking the weathering patterns and like the splashes of oil and things like that on a specific Sand Trooper. I wanted to be kind of my own Sand Trooper. But level 2 required you to have a backpack, so I had to build a backpack. So I do have a Sand Trooper backpack. And that was fun to build. I actually enjoyed building the Sand Trooper backpacks because it's an old Boy Scout pack, metal pack. If you can find that, some people build it out of plastic used for piping, for piping in your home. Then there's a lot of other things like seed trays that were vac formed. There's parts to 1970s water pitchers that are part of the costume, and all that. So I just marked all the black for this. Again, these are the side pieces for the ab to back plate connector. We got, I think, 2 more legs to do. Where's my other leg? Oh, here it is. 2 legs to do. The shoulder bells, the back piece. Oh, they're getting rated with party of 5. Welcome. I appreciate it. How are you guys doing? Hello there. I wish I had a hello there Obi-Wan right now, but I don't. So we're talking Star Wars costumes. I'm marking lines right now for where I'm going to be doing the score and snap method to crack these armor pieces out of its the vac form that's left over. So I'm going to be cleaning that up. I am the Lizard Queen. Welcome, Lizard Queen. All hail the Lizard Queen. So, not everybody does this marking. How's the build going? I just started this build. I got most of the stuff in the mail. Mail has been slow, as you guys have probably known, with all the holiday stuff and the COVID stuff. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate the follow there. But yeah, I worked on the helmet. I'll show you guys the helmet a little bit. Since I was doing a lot of sanding last time I streamed. Most of the time, this stream plays video games, but I started doing another costume build, so I figured I'd just stream it. So there's my Tank Trooper helmet. I actually cut out the visor from the mold the other day with a Dremel, and this was all filled in before because it was part of the cast. I used a small hand hacksaw to get this all opened up, and then I used a Dremel to clean everything up in it. There was a seam along the edge, so I spent most of the stream cleaning up the seam on the edge here. And then there's the horn plate that I had to clean up as well, and the blast shield part. Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, it's always fun to get this thing rolling. So this was a kit from Imperial Supply. They came out there's a lot of work to be done with this, but I did not make this mold myself. We'll just say that, but cleaning up everything, sanding it, painting it, doing all the detail work, doing the weathering will be fun. Thankfully, he comes with his kits come with lens material too. I'm almost ready to buy lens material online the other day. All right, let me get back to this shoulder belt I was working on. But yeah, thank you for the raid. So what were you building? Were you building something before you wrapped up? What were you working on? Oh, dropping stuff. Looks like a really good kit. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is again Imperial Supply. Again, I'm just marking the lines where that vac table met the mold. And then I'm going to score and snap these on a later date for a different stream because there's a lot of marking I wanted to get done tonight. I've got a 5-month-old little baby upstairs and his mama, who I'm sure wants me to spend some time with them, so getting that set up to just cut later and then go spend some quality family time with them. All right, have fun. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the good luck on my build. It will be a long time to get this thing finished up, but it'll be awesome. But I'm hoping to show most of the journey along the way. So thank you guys for rating the channel, and thank you for finding me. I appreciate it. It's cool. So you're working on another Furby mech. Wait a minute, like the Furbies from, like, what I think you mean? Like the Furbies from like the 90s? And there's a mech? You have a mech Furby? That's freaking sweet. So I'll have to look at your channel later. Do you stream it, or are you just working on it? Do you work on stream? that. That would be pretty cool. Yeah, 3D printing has made the world of crafting way more fun in the last, I'd say, decade. Like vac forming and stuff like this is pretty cool, but just being able to make something out of nothing, so to speak, with the spool of, which looks like almost fishing line, or no streaming. So you said yes, 3D model and print mech suits for Furbies. You print mech suits for Furbies. That is amazing. So that's like one thing, is you get a gift for somebody, you like give them a Furby as a gift, because it's a retro thing that people are into. People were into it back then. I always thought like Furbies and Teddy Ruxpins and all those old talking toys that had kind of like a look to them when their batteries got low and they had this very evil, dark, deep voice. It was a little disturbing. But having a low battery Furby in a mech suit would be freaking amazing. So this is the pieces for, this gets cut down the middle and I gotta trim out the sides here. This piece goes to the sides, the ab plate and the kidney plate, which we haven't gotten pulled out of the box yet, which we'll be doing here in a second. We're nearing the finish line for this marking session. Again, we're marking all the ABS plastic lines where the vac form table met the form of the mold itself, so we will know where to cut next time. And again, I always leave a little bit extra, because if you leave a little extra, you can always trim it up later. If you cut too low, then you're going to be contacting that vendor and asking for another piece, and it's going to cost you. So this is a detail part that allows you to adjust the size or thickness. So if you're a little bit wider in the waist, you can have this kind of stick out a little bit more. But some of the detail parts here get painted black. So the black on the white looks really nice. Again, with Rogue One, a lot of the costumes were redone, or reimagined, I guess you could say, because they wanted the stormtroopers to look a little bit more tight, more realistic than their 70s, 80s counterparts. Alright, so just the back side here, and then we're good with these two pieces. One day I'll have a better setup. I don't know what I want to do yet for this. I feel like this is not too bad. I've got myself here on the floor. I wanted to get, so my utility space is next door. That's where I do a lot of the cutting and all that. I don't have a webcam, or I don't have my computer set up over there. And so I'm thinking about maybe investing in like a 30-foot USB extender cable that I could plug in to my computer, and then plug in the webcam to that and just run the webcam next door. Oh, I'll definitely check out your Instagram after stream here. I'll check the chat log here. I'll definitely look at that. I'll have my wife pull it up because she's probably watching right now. So do you sell them, or do you do you model the mechs, or do you find them and then print them and you're just kind of doing it for yourself, or do you sell them like on an Etsy store or anything like that? I messed that up pretty bad. I'm going to wipe that down. Thankfully, you don't need an eraser to wipe off pencil marks on plastic. Just rub it with your finger. Now, it's kind of hard to get off, but you can rub it enough. You sell the print files. Okay, cool. That's good, because then at that point, if people want to use a certain type of filament, or they want to, I don't know, I guess they could use a certain color filament, but chances are they'd paint it anyway. But I love the idea of a mech suit for a Furby. So I scratched this, or maybe it's got scratched in the box, but That's not a bad thing. You know, the only thing you got to be concerned about with a lot of the hard armor costumes is, you know, banging it, getting it roughed up a little bit. But in the case with Star Wars, mainly a lot of the newer costumes and stuff that aren't Stormtroopers, they're allowed to be roughed up and weathered. Whereas with the Stormtrooper, of course, they're usually clean and pristine. Alright, we're done with this piece. Lots going on here. Okay, this shoulder bell's done. These two aren't done yet, so I'll put them in this pile. These shin pieces, we just got to trim them really quick. So these are shims for the shin pieces. And I'm just going to do a quick mark on this because they almost stay as is. It's almost just sanding down. And this is almost not even seen on the costume, just the side profile of this piece of plastic. So just to show you an example, I mean, even these little small details, which is a big piece that I'm holding, is only seen in like the corner of my shin pieces on the front. And these are used to actually space them out from the shins. Makes them look a little bit more thick and movie accurate too. Shin shims. Yeah, they're pretty much shin shims. We'll be actually making other shims out of the ABS plastic I have in this container to shim out some of the inner workings whenever I glue stuff together. Because once you get everything trimmed, you got to fit it to yourself. And when it fits well to yourself, then you know kind of where you need to shim and adjust accordingly. If you need to break out the heat gun to shape the plastic a little bit more to your body shape. You don't want to get too crazy with it because you do want to have a uniform look to other people that have this costume. But again, you've got to make it fit you. So a 501st costume that I have, let's say my Scout Trooper, for example, it's approved with me being the wearer. But if I were to give it to somebody else that maybe is a little bit taller than me or a little bit stockier than me that's shorter, they may be able to fit into the costume, but it might not look proportionally right. So that is the critical aspect that a lot of people don't realize when they go for approval is they can buy an approved costume from somebody else who's gotten it approved, but it's not really approved until you put it on and it looks right or correct on you. So keep that in mind if you are lurking on the internets and you find something like, oh, this is approved costume. Well, I already did that one. We're done with those. I'm going to have to sharpen my pencil soon. Getting low on pencil. Alright. So this is another part of another knee plate, the top part. People call this the boomerang. Again, this can be found on the Short Troopers, Tank Troopers, ACT Troopers. And I probably should be sitting over here so you can see me on this other cam. There we go. And just adds more detail to the shins. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this costume as well is I like the helmet a lot, but there's no thigh pieces. I tell you what, the most difficult thing about a Sand Trooper and a Stormtrooper is the thigh pieces are kind of uncomfortable because they're always knocking around and you're walking in them. You really can't sit in that costume. I've seen some people legit sit in that costume and it's very difficult to do without damaging your costume. But it can be done, but it's very uncomfortable because the plastic bites into you. So this back part, this again is going to go on the shin. It's going to be kind of like that somewhere on my leg. This backing, I'm not going to leave open. I will go out and buy a thicker piece of EVA foam at a craft store like Michael's, and then I will fill in this gap, and then I'm going to either use this epoxy sculpt to seal it, or I'm going to use Bondo to seal it, to make it all one piece. Space City Props, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. So anyway, those pieces, here's the actual shin plates. Parts of these get cut up. Here they are here. One looks a little taller than the other one by design. this actually was cut pretty well. He did a lot for me here. So this is just going to be a sanding job on one side, it looks like. And some people get crazy and they will use a Dremel on this. I finally have a real Dremel. I had a cheap Dremel that was just either it was on or it was off, and it was like, I don't know, it was like 1500 or 2000 RPM. It was like off to the races as fast as it would go, or it'd be turned off. And I recently just got one that has an adjustable or variable rate speed. So I may try dremeling some of this rather than sanding it when I get to the sanding phase after I've done all the score and snap. And that might save me a lot of time. We'll see. Now the top part here, I think most of this gets trimmed off. So we gotta just get to a point where we have a slight return edge. And I will check references on the Shore Trooper. Again, you don't see the Tank Trooper's lower half in the film, but you gotta assume that most of this stuff is based off of the same thing that a Shore Trooper wears because they have the same armor pieces. You can also mix up some Rondo, a mix of resin and Bondo. Yeah, that's not a bad idea either. And I guess the resin is going to be paintable and sandable, so that's not a bad idea. So the Bondo is kind of liquidy at first, right? It's kind of like a liquidy-ish, putty-ish type goop. It's like a glue, I guess. So if you mix the resin, would you let the resin sit a little bit to harden up and then use it? Or do you just use it to reinforce so when it dries, it's just stronger? Because I wouldn't be using it to use it as an adhesive. I'd be using it to just fill in gaps. I'll still be using the E6000 and CA glue to do most of the holding. So that one's done. Again, Kevin, who makes this armor, he actually did a good job at cutting this part off for me, at least on the sides. That's cool. In the resin mold down here, in the vacuum form mold down here, there's a little letter R, letting me know this is the right shin. That's a very cool thing. There's an L on this one, so that's a nice touch for this kit. Bondo 8S is a thick putty. Adding resin would make it horrible. So you'd want to get the strength of the Bondo in the resin with the ability to pour it. I got you. Okay. There's some sort of Bondo that I've seen. Maybe it's not Bondo. It's a filler. It's not wood glue, or sorry, it's not wood filler. It's not wood filler, but it's a thinner material, thinner liquid. When I say thinner, I mean it's still thick, but it's not like a putty. Because this stuff, this epoxy sculpt, is like a putty, and it would require, like, to fill in small gaps, you'd have to get it pretty wet to get the consistency that you want, and you'd actually kind of have to shave it off. Like, you build it up and shave it off, which I'll show you the top of my helmet. I didn't do that when I showed off the helmet earlier on stream. So I found that if I open my Stream Manager on the Twitch app, it does not close my chat window. Bond's glazing spot putty is good. Sandable and paintable. Bond's glazing spot putty. Okay. So I will be doing some Bondo and putty and sealants and filler research here in the very, very near future, because I need to find something that's going to be similar to that epoxy sculpt but not as heavy, because again, it's very much like a clay. All right, so this is done. We're almost done. We got these pieces here. I'm not doing those, and these last two big pieces, and that's it. So we'll have the to-do pile. Here's an example. The kit also includes the stencils that he, I'm sure, prints out for you, so that whenever we put the U shape on the ab plate, it's actually designed to be the exact same size as his ab plate. Bondo glazing spot putty. Okay. Okay. Not that I need to do any shameless plugs, but this was the guy that I bought it from. Now the helmet and the armor kit. The soft parts, either you can do them yourself. I actually hired somebody, or people just say commissioned, whatever, somebody to do the soft parts for me, because I can't sew worth a darn. I mean, I'm not bad at sewing. I can use a sewing machine. I'm decent, but I'm by no means an expert. So a lot of times when I do the soft parts for the costumes, I usually just hire somebody else to do it. It depends. If it's a simple thing, then I'll do it. I use it to not have to sand for eternity on 3D prints. Okay. Yeah, because you get some of that thicker stuff on there, you'll be sanding for days. And you don't want to use like a sander on it, like a belt sander, because then it'll just tear your stuff apart. So we're back to another 2 shins. This is the inner and outer opposite sides that we didn't do for the other 2 shin pieces. So there is that. I'm going to do the top up here. So we'll mark this up. So there is a specific method that this guy used. So at the top here, there's a kind of this outer facing part to the shin piece. He actually cut, in the video that I watched, the guy who made this plastic back form, he shaped it almost like an L shape, so whenever he cuts the other piece, they sit into each other very well. And then when you go to bond it together and glue it down the seam, the front seam, it fits a lot smoother, and then you can fill in the gap with whatever you want to fill it in with, putty or what have you. Again, I'm going to leave a pretty big return edge on the top of these. It's probably not going to stay like this. I'd say this return edge, for the most part, is probably over like 1/4 of an inch, if not a little bit more. I did that with my Sand Trooper, my TK, Stormtrooper, whatever, when I first did it, and had to leave it like that for a little bit until I found out exactly how it was going to fit on my leg. So always leave some room. So just trim off where the shapes are that was sitting on the table, and then before you trim off all the excess, especially if you're not skipping leg day, and you tend to be a runner, and not that I'm a runner, but like if you have thicker calves, by all means, don't trim off too much, because then you won't be able to fit these. Some guys that are bigger guys, they'll actually shim the backs. So they'll get extra flat plastic and they'll shim it so that they can still close it. Yeah, me plus Gabby's sewing machine. Yeah, I ended up buying a very similar sewing machine to Gabby's sewing machine from way back when we were juniors in college, man. A long time ago. I spent all day, that one day, just sewing that Assassin's Creed Ezio, or not Ezio, it was Altair costume. And I just sat there, and I remember, like, Lisa and you guys are going to class. I had no class that day. I remember you guys coming back, and you're like, "You're still sewing?" I'm like, "Yeah, still sewing." It just felt like no time at all. It was hilarious. So I can see that there's a separate line that starts down here for this cost, for this mold. So that's way too much, but we'll at least trim that off for now. All right, this one's done. So that's in the pile, the done pile. Just a couple more pieces to go. We'll do something simple. This is a square piece. So in this case, this square piece is a back plate that connects to a part that we haven't looked at yet. This is the back plate, or the kidney plate, as they call it. This is the bottom. This is the bottom. This is the top. when this was all, if this was all trimmed, this would go on like that. Not like that. That's wrong. Like that. Do this one still. So we're just gonna go around the edge here. This one is thankfully a square. This part gets split in the back. Actually, it looks like all one piece. This little divot here. Eventually, people seal the backs of their costumes or the fronts of their costumes to get into it different ways, as long as the edge isn't visible. But a lot of times with shore troopers, what they do is they'll cut this back seam here, and then this plate eventually, it's part of the costume. It's going to go on here anyway. And so they separate these two pieces so that whenever you have this attached to the ab plate, it flexes in the back. So you can actually put it on like a pair of pants or like, I guess, a skirt or whatever. And it rides up to your ab section. Or you can kind of get into it like you're wrapping it around your body. And then at that point, you have somebody else who's helping you suit up. You have this back piece with a ton of Velcro on the back, and you have Velcro on each sides of this piece because this middle part would not be there anymore. And you'd place that down there, and that Velcro would hold this piece on so that you would then hide the Velcro entirely and also be able to get in and out of the costume without any visible edges. So that's the purpose of that. And every costume's different, like depending on what you're working on. Like if you're doing a stormtrooper, some people will do kind of like hold ups, like the kind of like you'd see on stockings or whatever. So you'd have like a garter belt, and then you'd have straps that go across the front of your leg to hold up your thigh pieces. Some people actually attach the thigh pieces directly to the kidney plate or the ab plate, and they have suspenders off the kidney and the ab plate to their shoulders. So it's usually personal preference on how you make your strapping system, but you want to make sure it's the number one rule is make sure it's comfortable, but two, make sure it's going to be sturdy enough to hold up when you're walking around, because you don't want to be walking around and then the armor start falling off on you, because then people will be like making fun of you. By people I mean, I don't know, anybody who's watching now. So tomorrow is Wednesday. This week is going pretty quick. I feel like today went pretty fast, but it's been very busy. I finally got back to work. I took a week off last week. Being back to work, there was no shortage of work, and I finally got a lot of good stuff, adjusted for our schedule to not have to make us work like crazy. But I work in software development, so usually it's at least for our customer, it's very busy all the time. Now this lip here, I don't know if this gets trimmed or not. I will have to go back and watch that video. I think it does, because that doesn't really make sense on how that would sit. So I'm gonna leave that marking the way it is, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to make adjustments to this later. But again, do your homework before you cut it. That's all it takes. All right, we'll do this last leg piece, and then we got those two last larger pieces, and then we're done. So the realization whenever you start building these costumes and you start putting them on to fit yourself, that's when it starts getting fun. Like, oh, I'm really building this thing. I was really excited when I built my snow trooper that way, because it was cold out. And once I got my costume finished and I got it approved, there was a day where it snowed outside, so I ran outside and had my wife take pictures of me while I was in my costume, and it was fun. I've since redone my cowl on my mask because it was a little too street for my liking. I thought I looked like a KKK guy. I didn't like it, and so I redid the mask and bought different vinyl material from a different vendor. I didn't like looking like a space white supremacist. It was bad. So We're doing on time. We're doing all right in an hour and 44 minutes. Yeah, I think this will be done here right around the 2 hour mark. So again, I spent 2 hours with a pencil drawing on plastic. That's all I did for 2 hours. So that gives you a frame of reference on how long building a costume like this takes. And if you're willing to put in the time, it's it's more affordable than trying to buy it outright. You see a lot of those vendors that are like, oh, this is pre-made, it'll be $2,000. Stormtroopers are just space Nazis, but it's Star Wars, so it's cool. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that was the original premise. A lot of German influence. George Lucas wanted a lot of German influence with the original trilogy, with the Imperial officers as well as the stormtroopers, which is a term used by certain types of select German soldiers during World War II. So yeah, you would be correct. They are space Nazis. But we like to be good space Nazis, where we go and 501st, we go to children's hospitals and visit sick kids, and we go to charity events and things like that. So our motto is bad guys doing good. Alright, so this one is just about finished. And we are good with that one. That's correct. Yeah, the shape of Vader's helmet is based off the German helmet during World War II. That is correct. So again, we're going to work on the kidney plate here. The kidney plate and the ab plate have some very unique spots toward the bottom where the belt will go. I don't even know how that shape gets cut. I think it gets cut right here. Yeah, it does, because you can see the shape right there. And a lot of people put snaps down on these lower sections of the plate down here, and they snap their belt onto it. Because the belt will fit on your waist and you can tighten it up, but if you put snaps on your belt too, it'll hold it in position. So when you bend and move, you won't have any drooping belts, and you'll always look nice and sharp. So snaps are a secret there for keeping your belt up. I actually had snaps on my TK, which I again turned into a Stand Trooper, and I didn't like how the snaps would kind of bend or prevent my bending, so I would just switch it to Velcro, and it works out perfectly fine. I did have originally all Velcro only on the whole kit, and one hot summer parade I was in, parts of the kit were falling apart, and I know somebody else who had a Stormtrooper, their kit was actually falling off of them because the sticky adhesive on the one side of the Velcro melted off, and it was causing their costume to droop. So I actually changed mine out to all snaps and bracket systems that were used in the original trilogy, specifically A New Hope, for the Sand Troopers. So I use a bracket system, which is essentially aluminum wire and some elastics that are screwed in with a flathead screwdriver, like little nut and bolt. And that's how they pieced together the early Stormtrooper and Sand Trooper costumes, mainly the Sand Trooper costumes. The Sand Trooper costumes were done first because they were filming on location in Tunisia and not on a soundstage just yet. So George wanted to have some costumes ready to roll for when they were out there. I don't know if I like that lip or not. I'm going to add some more to this lip here. I guess based on this mold, it's pretty thin. So maybe it is pretty thin. You're familiar with 501st, nothing against Star Wars at all. Love Star Wars and not real life Nazis. Yes, no, I understand. No, that is completely reasonable. So we're just finishing up here. I don't know if I like this line. I will have to go back and look at the costume references and the CRLs for the 501st, and I'll be looking at the references of the photos that I have. I don't think I have anything that's going to show the kidney plate from the top, because again, this character was only shown in the tank itself. And there's some reference material in the Rogue One costume kind of picture guide. They always release books when there's a new film of all the different little visual guides to the specific movie. And there's usually some more details and photos of the character there that was used to build the CRL. I hear someone coming down the stairs. You want to show off a little Cooper to the stream? Because I'm almost done.
I can.
Unless you don't want to.
Where do you want me to put it? You got stuff everywhere.
I don't know. Safety first. Don't bring him over here if you don't think it's safe.
You have something on the chair.
I have a phone cable right here, though.
Okay.
So I can move that. Have people been... No, okay. Just making sure. Oops. I hid the chat by accident. Coop. Yeah, I'm sorry. You might have to show off Cooper to Ben's watching, so... The microphone might be in your way, too. Coop is loose. Oh, his head will be on the side where the chat is. There he is. Hi. Hello, Cooper. I got a big old piece of plastic. You're so cute and tiny. Alright, last piece. Can you wear this on your ab plate? Can you put this on your belly?
I think that's bigger than his body.
It's like your whole body, buddy. Alright, so last piece to mark. I gotta get going. I need to find some food. Get some food in me. I haven't had proper dinner because it's my own fault because I decided to stream. Is that a burp, buddy?
Maybe.
Yeah, burps.
Oh,
Oof.
yep, that's a burp.
Did you just feed him?
No. He just burps sometimes.
He's a burpy boy. And, yeah, he's a cutie. He's only 5 months old, so he can sit up, but he needs help. He needs assistance. But he's getting there. I mentioned that we gave him rice cereal yesterday.
Yeah.
And he was like insane about that rice cereal.
I'm sure he'd appreciate some more today, too.
Is that the plan? Do you have some milk for him up there? The rice cereal?
Not yet. Make it happen.
Alright, so this one's a little different. You can see on the ab plate, I'm starting to mark it, it's a diagonal line. Unlike the kidney plates that you see and the ab plates that you see on the Stormtrooper, which are very, straight down, 90-degree angle, corners and stuff like that. So this is coming down. That's why we had that other side piece that I marked earlier. Right here, actually. That fits on the back plate, but that helps the shape right here. Again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense until I trim everything. I'm in a crafty mood, so I'm cleaning up the last word. Oh, okay. So what did you? So you when you say cleaning it up, you printed it. You printed it out, and you're just like sanding it, or are you cleaning it like you've already sanded it and you're getting ready to paint it? Oh, Cooper, hello. You just eyeballing me like crazy, buddy.
Next time we'll put him in a Star Wars shirt.
Star Wars shirt for the stream.
Yeah.
So then at the bottom here, yeah, it's been printed for a while. Okay. So the bottom here, you can see that there's an edge. That's just like this weird kind of trapezoid shape. And then there's this like square shape that's just kind of boom right there. It's probably hard to see on stream right now. But square, square, square. And so these little gaps right here get cut out. it's bizarre, but it allows for the bottom part to flex, and it allows you to add snaps for your belt. Because this whole bottom part will get covered up by your belt and the other accessories that are kind of hanging off of your belt. Now there are other parts to the costume that I didn't show today on stream that we don't have to mark. Again, those are all resin detail casts, which I will have to sand, similar to how we sanded the helmet the other day. Some of it I'll be able to bust out the Dremel on a slower speed now that I have a nicer Dremel, and clean it up pretty quick. But that'll be for another day. Again, I'll be doing some of the bigger cutting and loud noise based things off stream, so you don't have to just sit here on Twitch listening to my Dremel make a ton of noise, because that's no fun. That's just loud noises. Better so I can talk to you guys while we're working on stuff. He's sitting pretty well. Yeah, he is sitting, but Lisa is holding him. But he is sitting pretty well. And he's good whenever he's out of distraction. So when I'm talking, he's paying attention to me, which is good. But he will topple over. He's not careful. You better be careful of that little boy. So, have you come up with any extra names that maybe you don't want to talk about on stream? But whenever I talk to you later, Ben, later this week or maybe this weekend, whenever I get that package in the mail. So I like to call him Little Mister. That's my nickname from him. My dad, when I grew up, called me Shorty all the time, and he still calls me Shorty to this day, even though he's like 1 inch taller than me, which he still technically holds the title of being taller than me, so I guess it's still legit. But so I like to call him Little Mister. So hopefully it'll stick with him for a while, at least until he gets to middle school, is what I was telling Lisa. Maybe he won't want me to call him that anymore. But I don't mind my dad calling me Shorty. I answer to it all the time. But like nobody else calls me that, just my dad. So I don't answer it. Like nobody else calls me that. So, but I have like coworkers that'll call me other nicknames too. Like my initials are TPJ, so I have an employee who calls me TPJ, even though that's longer than saying TJ, which is what I normally go by. Well, we have a few we'll talk about later. Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, that does it for the markings. I'm gonna have this ready to go too. I gotta put this giant heaping pile of plastic away now. But before I wrap up, this is the last piece I wanted to show you. We were talking about the belt. The belt pieces that are plastic here. I didn't mark the cut because again I'm asking the guy to see if he would sell me the resin kit. This is part of a resin kit for the front of the belt, like the center part, the belt buckle, so to speak. And then I don't know if I showed this off too. There's a lot of little details. Like this is the detailed ridges to the sides of the forearms, and that sits like that. Again, these all need to get cleaned up because there's a lot of cast mold scratches on the side and things like that. But that gets glued down there, and you have a nice detailed look to the piece. Which normally, if you were to buy like a Stormtrooper from A New Hope, when you buy a kit, those hard edge details aren't present because they weren't present in the movie. It was part of the vacuum form process, so those details will just be on the plastic themselves. You'd be ready to roll. So costumes in the new era of Star Wars, while they may have less parts to them when it comes to coverage on your body, there's a lot more details that you have to make sure you get right. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up for tonight. Thank you for the raid. I know we had a raid earlier on, so thank you for that. Thank you for all the new followers that have shown up to this stream. Just a quick recap. Normally we play video games on this stream, but I've also started doing some costume work. We do something. The channel's called Refund Arcade. We play a game for about 2 hours normally, and then we talk about it to see if we would refund it or keep it. Most of the time we don't actually refund it. Some situations where we do refund the game because it's just a cash grab and it's really crappy. But the purpose of that is it gives people a quick review of a 2 hours worth of gameplay so they can make a decision themselves, or at least see if they like my decision on if the game makes sense. Because again, Steam lets you have games for 2 hours, or I think it's 14 days after you've purchased it, whatever comes first. So for 2 hours of gameplay, rather. And that's the premise for the channel. And sometimes we just play games to play other games, like just to have fun. Like we started last week, our continuation of Jedi Fallen Order for a little bit. And then we kicked off a new game, which we haven't really kind of reviewed, but wanted to play it more of it, Divinity Original Sin 2, which we'll probably do every other weekend, at least whenever we stream a game. So again, thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll chat with you later. Say bye. Bye, Cooper.